Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast. The government has a new plan to help people get eco-friendly heating for their properties, but campaigners say heat pumps aren't the answer for everyone.
Having those different options is really important because when we think about a typical home, what we actually have in our rural communities are not the typical homes often we're envisaging when the government is writing these strategies.
We'll have more on that a little later. First today, making sure that a farm is sustainable, being productive long-term without ruining the environment or damaging wildlife can be expensive. In a debate held earlier this month at the Oxford Real Farming Conference, a panel organised by the Wildlife Trusts discussed whether we can afford the food produced in this way, nature-friendly food. It brought together a young food activist, a representative from Better Food Traders, and Cambridgeshire farmer Tom Pearson, who's converting to regenerative farming. He feels the cost of that effort should be reflected in the price he gets paid for his produce.
What we haven't put on that accounting sheet is that the investment we're putting in our farm for the future resilience. We are investing in our soil, our main asset. We're putting more carbon in. What's the value of that? We're improving nature. What's the value of that? We've got clean water coming off our land. What's the value of that? Well, no one's paying us for that now, but they may well do in the future. And I would like to be able to farm in 30 years' time, where I think a lot of these conventional farms we're benchmarking against may struggle to make a profit in the future.
My name's Dev Sharma. I'm a 20-year-old food activist.
You talked about your experience of being brought up in a food desert. You say there's going to be a youthquake on food, like a youthquake on climate change, like Greta Thunberg with climate change. How do you see that panning out?
I think young people have had enough of being deceived by big food companies. And actually the deception has been so blatant, it's almost embarrassing. It's everywhere, it's in front of us. You go into a supermarket, you pick up a smoothie, and you can see the false health claims plastered over. There's going to be a time when young people, through social media, through education, actually learn and understand that these big food companies don't have our backs. And then we'll vote with our feet and vote with our money, and they'll be forced to change. Or maybe we'll just try different options.
Do you think by the time you have children that landscape will have changed?
I think that the Overton window is shifting so fast. Things are happening at a crazy pace. I don't want it to be for my children. I want it to be for my younger brother when he turns 18. That's only in a few years' time. If a government had the will and the courage and the guts to really stand up for children's health, if they really are all about growth, then what they would do is they would invest in the growth and the health of the future generation, and they would get it done in the next parliament.
I'm Julia Kirby-Smith. I'm Executive Director of Better Food Traders.
Well, Julia, how could we encourage local food systems to work towards affordable, nature-friendly food?
There are some really good examples, places like Bury and Greater Manchester, Monmouthshire with their milk contract. It's also about splitting down those contracts into smaller lots so that smaller producers have a chance of going for those.
Why hasn't it happened everywhere?
It's glacial because these contracts do exist for years and years and years. And because actually putting the things in place to allow smaller, local, sustainable producers to feed into what is, really a huge market, you need a whole series of logistics to consolidate that, getting that food from A to B, for instance. There's quite a lot that needs to be put in place to make it work.
We also have Craig Bennett here, CEO of the Wildlife Trusts. You asked, can we afford nature-friendly food? I would ask, how do we afford nature-friendly food?
I would say the way we think about perhaps of nature-friendly food as being expensive at the moment is because of a system that creates and perpetuates it to be like that. What about the huge costs on society that go with ultra-processed foods on people's health? What about the costs to farmers of an industrial food system that means they don't actually get much of the profits and the benefits from this system? So it's time to shift to a food system that's good for people's health, good for nature, and good long-term for farmers.
Craig Bennett there from the Wildlife Trusts. Well, farming sustainably is our topic of the week. With the world's population expected to increase to nearly 10 billion by 2050, vertical farming is sometimes suggested as part of the solution. Crops are grown under artificial light, indoors, not susceptible to the vagaries of the weather. This method of farming can use less water and fewer chemicals than outdoor crops. But how much energy does it use? That's a question for Scotland's Rural College, which recently opened its own full-scale vertical farm at its Edinburgh campus. Richard Baines reports.
To protect our plant from disease and pests in general, we have the airlock door, the low pressure room, and the high pressure room. The disease or the pests movement will be minimized by the high pressure.
Dr. Hadi Aliki is the manager of this vertical farm, and after some strict biosecurity, he's giving me a guided tour.
We have the lift to move the trays in, out, up, down as well.
We're now in the heart of the farm. It's a large room about 20 feet high and filled with steel trays, one above the other, lit by banks of vari-coloured lights. Some trays are empty and some hold hundreds of tiny plants.
You can have individual light recipe for each tray, 34 light recipe at once, and control the red, the blue, and green. To deliver the nutrient solution to each tray individually, we have 2 nozzles in each side. On the back, we have another 2 to supply each tray with the nutrient solution through this pipe.
Tell me then the purpose of having the commercial scale vertical farm at SRUC.
Having the vertical farm, give the knowledge to our students, make them ready for the new market. It is a very fast-growing market. Many countries, they are building their own vertical farm. They don't have people to run it for them. We are teaching our students how to operate the vertical farm and understand the technology behind the vertical farming system. The other reason, helping the researcher, especially the breeder, by shortening the breeding cycle for them and speed the growth of the plant by applying the optimum condition and minimize the time that they need to get the result from their trials.
I'm Karen Harris, an HND student studying horticulture. I'm quite interested in food security and how things are affected by climate change. So it's another way of farming and growing, and I think it's going to become more important in the future. So having access to that and being able to learn about it is really important.
I'm Molly Cave. I'm studying production science horticulture. The most fun was being inside the farm itself with the lab coats and the hairnets and the shoe covers, watering, we were taking pictures, we were monitoring chlorophyll levels in the leaves. We sowed the seeds that some of the research has been done ourselves, which was really cool.
The farm has been paid for with a £200,000 government grant, plus a government loan and the college's own cash.
The vertical farm is essential really for delivering our production science and plant science and technology horticulture qualifications.
Lecturer Ruth Vikos leads on horticultural innovation at SRUC.
It takes up a lot of energy and that comes with a cost. So growing low-value crops, I don't think it will contribute to food security because we have a globalised import-export system. Whereas what my plan for our vertical farm is looking at very high-value crops that could be used for medicinal reasons, so cancer treatments, for example. Food supplements, so we have some seeds going at the moment, which is stevia, like a 0-calorie sugar supplement. I grew up in Shetland. We went 5, 6, 7 days sometimes with no food in the supermarkets because the boats couldn't get up because the weather was just so extreme. So this type of technology can contribute to food security in rural and remote locations.
Ruth Vikos ending that report. The government's new Warm Homes plan has been set up to help people switch to eco-friendly heating systems for their homes, such as air source heat pumps and solar panels. The scheme will provide £15 billion in grants. The 5-year plan has been welcomed by the energy industry, but some see it as a missed opportunity. I asked Kerry Booth from the Rural Services Network what's in it for rural communities.
The Warm Homes Plan focuses a lot on installing heat pumps. It talks about how heat pumps are suitable for the majority of rural homes, but we know that there's lots of adaptations that may need to be done to those homes because often in rural areas our homes are harder to heat, they're less energy efficient, so there will be changes that need to be made, particularly things like it might be that a home needs to have double glazing installed, for which you may need planning. So in some of those more protected areas of our country and our national parks, there's quite a whole lot that residents need to go to be able to get to that stage of actually installing a heat pump.
Do the grants available actually take that sort of thing into account? Insulation, double glazing, that sort of thing?
So you can have a grant for actually installing the heat pump, but often it will be people need to fund those other changes to their homes themselves. Now, there will be support for those who are on the lowest of income, but actually for other residents, that could be a significant cost to them to make their home heat pump ready. So we think that there perhaps needs to be alternative solutions for some of our rural communities as finding ways to heat their homes.
Let's just look at something quite specific. In Cornwall, more than 35,000 homes use oil central heating because they're off the gas grid. Now, villagers in Key Helen near Camborne have been trialling an alternative. Instead of kerosene, for the past 5 years, they've been using hydro-treated vegetable oil. Villagers like Nigel and Steph Uren say it's much more affordable than heat pumps, as does David Biggs, who says an air source heat pump would have cost him £60,000.
I'd have to be dead by about 100 years before I get payback on it, so it's just simply not going to happen.
We're not topping up that as much. If I could get away with it, I'm not swapping it back. The money it's saving me.
For me, why they won't listen and realise all those people that are way out in the sticks, that are on oil at the moment, would benefit so much from this.
The fuel supplier involved in this trial said even substituting part of the kerosene with hydro-treated vegetable oil would make a difference. Here's John Whedon from Mitchell and Webber.
A 20% blend doesn't sound that ambitious. However, you have to get to net zero in certain steps. And if we said to the government, we can take away 20% of all the fossil heating oil in the country overnight, that is a big step. We need to throw everything at decarbonising rural areas.
Well, back to Kerry Booth. The Department for Energy Security and Net Zero told us that they're consulting on the future role of alternatives like hydro-treated vegetable oil, and that these could play a limited role in decarbonising heat for households off the gas grid. But they say they'll prioritise biomass boilers. Could something like that be a good starting point for people with oil central heating?
I think it could be. It's great that they're actually consulting on that at the moment. We will be responding to that alternative clean heating consultation. And I think we do need to recognise that there will be some of our communities, particularly in our rural areas, where we do need a different solution. And that might be a biogas boiler. It might be using the oil as they're trialling there in Cornwall. But having those different options is really important because when we think about a typical home, what we actually have in our rural communities are not the typical homes often we're envisaging when the government is writing these strategies. We need some of those targeted solutions for rural areas.
And for the heat pumps, there is this concern that there'll be pressure on the electricity grid. Is that a concern for you?
Absolutely, that's a concern for our organisation. We know that resilience of the electricity network is not there in all of our rural communities. I live in a village in Devon. We've had 3 big power cuts in the last month, one of them for most of the day. So actually, we know that communities are experiencing those power cuts and adding more and more onto the electricity network. We need to make sure that it's capable of taking that. I think for us as well, we're concerned about that skills gap and having the companies there within our rural communities to deliver on this. So to deliver all of the insulation, to deliver and fit those heat pumps and have the advice there for communities, we need to make sure that our skills and our local economy keeps up with that demand as well.
Kerry Booth from the Rural Services Network. That's all from us. I'm Anna Hill. The producer was Rebecca Rooney. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.